Lama Conde. Brutal execution in Bremen. Imagine drowning while standing on dry land. Dying because you cannot breathe due to the fluid coming out of your own body. This horrific scene took place not in a medieval torture chamber, but in early 2005, in the heart of Europe, Germany. Today, we tell the story of the fate of Lama Conde, a tragic event where the line between human rights and police brutality was drawn in blood. December 27, 2004, the city of Bremen. Police arrested Lama Conde, a 35-year-old migrant from Sierra Leone, on suspicion of drug trafficking. Officers claimed he had swallowed several packets that looked like cocaine. By law, the police should have waited for the packets to pass out of his body naturally. However, the Bremen police preferred quick results. Conde was brought to the police station. He was forced to undergo a procedure called Brechmittel. This was a method of obtaining evidence by forcing a person to vomit using medical substances. Conde fiercely resisted this brutality. Nevertheless, they tied him to a chair and forced a rubber tube through his nose and down into his stomach. Emetic drugs and water were pumped into his stomach. Conde struggled to breathe, his body fighting against the procedure. He was forced to swallow his own vomit. As a result, the liquid went into his lungs instead of his stomach. Even though the doctor saw that Conde was struggling for his life, the procedure was repeated several times. After a few minutes, foam began to come out of Conde's mouth and nose. His brain shut down due to a lack of oxygen. In medical terms, this is called cerebral hypoxia, but in simple terms, it was drowning in his own vomit. He was taken to the hospital, where Conde lay in a coma for 10 days. On January 7, 2005, Lama Conde passed away. Only one packet of cocaine was found in his stomach. During the investigation, horrific facts were revealed. It was discovered that in Bremen alone, more than 1,000 people had been tortured in this manner between 1991 and 2004. In 2001, a young man named Achidi John had died in the exact same way in Hamburg, yet the government had not stopped the practice. Finally, in 2006, the European Court of Human Rights ruled that this method was torture degrading to human dignity and banned it in Germany. Abdul Wali, the execution in search of justice. Imagine, you come to a military base of your own free will, without any coercion, to prove your innocence. You believe in justice, but instead of the law, you face a literal executioner. Today, we discuss one of the darkest stains in the history of U.S. intelligence, which occurred in Afghanistan in 2003. The tragedy of Abdul Wali. Suspicion and voluntary surrender. June 2003. Kunar Province, Afghanistan. A 28-year-old simple farmer named Abdul Wali is suspected in a rocket attack on the U.S. Asadabad military base. Wali was not a terrorist. He came to the base himself on the advice of the provincial governor to clear his name and prove his innocence. He expected justice, but his fate was handed to David Pissarro, a contract worker for the Central Intelligence Agency, CIA. 3 nights of horror. David Pissarro was not just a regular interrogator. He was a former member of the Green Berets Special Forces. From June 18th to June 20th, for 3 days, he tortured Wali under the pretext of interrogation. According to later testimony from soldiers, Pissarro used extremely brutal methods. Wali was not allowed to sleep for 3 days and nights, and he was given almost no food or water. Witnesses in court provided a horrific fact. Pissarro kicked Wali in the groin so hard with his heavy combat boots that the prisoner's body was lifted off the ground by the impact. These blows shattered Wali's pelvic bone. Due to the broken bone, he was unable to even use the restroom, which caused him unbearable internal pain. However, the executioner did not stop. Pissarro dealt merciless blows to the prisoner's limbs and stomach with a heavy metal-bodied Maglite flashlight. By the second night, Abdul Wali was no longer asking for mercy. He was begging to be killed. His final words were a moan, "I'm dying." On the morning of June 21st, 2003, Abdul Wali passed away. Lies and delayed justice. In the initial military reports, the cause of death was listed as a heart attack. The CIA wanted to close the case entirely. However, the consciences of some soldiers on the inside were troubled, and the truth began to emerge in 2004. In 2006, David Pissarro became the first CIA worker to be convicted for torturing a prisoner outside the U.S. after the September 11th events. He was sentenced to 8 years and 4 months in prison, which was later reduced to 6 years. Only 6 years in prison in exchange for a human life and horrific torture. Conclusion. Abdul Wali was never a terrorist. He was just a simple farmer who believed in his own innocence. His fate shows how quickly humanity can disappear on the battlefields of war, and how justice sometimes arrives very late or in a weak form.